Sue. Thank you, all those who have joined us from all over the world. I hope that we're going to have a good time this afternoon. My name is Edward Debra, and I'm here to talk to you about the role of risk HSE professionals in improving workplace safety culture in Ghana. This is at the backdrop of the fact that I'm a Ghanaian based in Ghana, having worked in risk HSE all my life. I feel that I want to use this platform to share some insights as to how we're managing health and safety and risk in Ghana, and how health and safety risk professionals are trying to improve workplace safety culture within the country. The presentation is going to outline as follows. We want to, first of all, try to demystify what risk and HSE issues are as far as operating in Ghana is concerned. We also try to look at the regulatory overview of HSE issues within the country, with some key incidents and accidents that has happened in the past. And then we want to look at employees as key stakeholders in trying to improve workplace safety culture. And finally, we'll try to look at how we can also improve workplace safety culture. Then we look at the role of risk HSE professionals, and we get some key takeaways that will support us deliver safety excellence. So in trying to demystify this, I looked at these diagrams, and on top of my mind, we just want to find out what risk management is all about, its policy framework, but then the management plans that there is, how you can control fraud within business, and then conducting fraud risk assessments and all of that. We also look at regular audits and then how an audit committee is supposed to come in. So risk management, as we all know, are trying to identify everything that could pose a threat to the business and finding ways that you can control these. So on top of my mind, coming from the oil and gas sector in Ghana, most of the risk that we face within the value chain has predominantly been theft. Theft from workers, theft from employees, theft from the community and stuff like that. So how do we control these things? Most companies have invested into state-of-the-art CCTV cameras, trying to have some security controls in place to support them regularize their businesses and prevent such people from tampering with their businesses and destroying the flow of how they expect things to be. Now, even with that plan in place, there are still a lot of concerns, as in still people still stealing, and then people sometimes even burglary and things, to the point that people can die on the forecourts as a result of theft and all that. So there's the need for regular audits to be carried out in such places. By doing these audits, you are able to tell what is going right, what is not going so well. Then you find a way to control what is not going well so you could improve. It's more like planning to do implement the Deming cycle of plan, do, check, and act. So important that at any given point in time, all the policies and frameworks that we have after planning, we take our time to actually implement it by getting it done. And then in the process of doing it, let's try to make some time to check it to see whether it's fit for purpose. If it's not, we need to go back to the drawing board, find ways of doing it better so that we can improve the bottom line. Every business is for profit. And the key ingredient that all of us will want to understand is that realizing profit will mean that empowering your people to deliver on the mandate. If you do not empower your people, it becomes a problem realizing the profit that you've set out to achieve. Then again, there are also quite a number of cycles that every disaster goes through. So there's obviously a mitigation plan. Then you also want to think about your preparedness, your response, then your recovery. When the untoward happens, there's always the need to begin to think about what to do. What to do has always been a challenge because there are no clear structures that tells you exactly how to go about handling such disasters or how to go about your staff in trying to mitigate the potential of such disasters from recurring. That is what I think is worth our attention. We all have to understand that things will happen. In as much as we have defined plans, best plans in place, things still happen. And when they do happen, what do? We've got to be prepared. Being proactive is one way towards predicting the eventualities that might happen and then finding a way towards mitigating all those things when they do happen. So it's important that we try to invest some time, resources in putting up some plans that will support. COVID, as a typical example, came unannounced, but lots of people obviously had their businesses collapsing. Lots of people also died in the process. but other businesses were also quick to rise to the occasion to have plans in place that will supported them to respond properly into the disaster that had happened, and then they recovered as quickly as possible. Although it wasn't as fast as we all expected, they still were able to make some gains from recoveries. So it's always important that when we identify our risk, with COVID being one, we need to also find a way of being prepared to meet it. We need to check our responses to be sure that they are fit for purpose. Then we need to also find recovery plans in place so that we can avoid some of these things. The same thing goes for environmental aspects and things like that. If you have spillages, we are talking about climate change and all of that. People are falling trees, water bodies are being destroyed and all of that. It affects people because people's livelihood depend on these things. So we need to be prepared to have plans in place to deal with such disasters, and then we have to respond properly to them so they do not unnecessarily get out of hand because it affects people. As I mentioned earlier, every business is for profit. So as a business, you need to understand that risk could come. Risk in the form of fire, risk in the form of flood, risk in the form of theft. All of these could come. What plans do you have to be able to meet up with it, overcome it, and keep your business going? That is what we will need to talk about. And it is very important that these things are being discussed. So then going forward, we also have to understand that health and safety is everybody's responsibility. It's not just for a department or just for the risk professional, but everybody within the entire value chain has a role to play. Because when we come together, there's so much we can achieve. But if we decide to work in silos, not considering what is happening or what is about to happen, it turns out that we won't be able to achieve the desired results that we are after. So it is very critical that at any given point in time, we work together in teams. Everybody has a role to play. The cleaner has a role to play. The managing director also has a role to play. Even under ILO convention, we realize that there's role for employer and employees, but all of them contribute to the success of safety culture. So it's important that we work together and see HSE as everybody's responsibility, not a select few. We also want to look at regulatory overview in Ghana. So we've got several laws that are governing risk, health, and safety practice in Ghana. What we do not have in Ghana, however, is an overarching law that sort of captures all of these things. I'll give you a typical example. So in the UK, there's a health and safety executive that has the responsibility for health and safety in the UK, irrespective of the sector. However, there are still other regulators that are managing some sectors, but health and safety executive is the overarching body for it. So in Ghana, we've got Factories, Offices, and Shops Act 1970 at 328. This act actually is mandated by law that every employer that keeps people within their premises for more than 6 hours are supposed to have some basic needs that the people need. Needs like restroom, needs like the right PPE, needs like training, needs like management commitment towards a fair pay, fair job, a safe job, and all of that. This act spells out that clearly that all employers must comply with this to keep their people safe. Even in trainings, this body is also mandated by the law of Ghana to be able to push for trainings for people as far as health and safety is concerned. The challenge, however, is that the act has been passed for a long time and there has not been any amendments made. When you look at the current global climate, it tells you that you cannot use 1970 solutions to solve 2022 problems. We've got to be agile. So there's the need for some reforms to be carried out in this regard so that this act becomes relevant to the current challenges, so it could be used to solve the problems of today. That's not present. So the act is not living up to its full billing. The Ghana National Fire Service Act 1997 is one that is robust, that is still working, but they are primarily, are responsible for dealing with fires from residential properties to commercial establishments and all of that. They are doing quite well, but they're still under-resourced. So they also need some support to be able to carry out their mandate. They need lots of training to be able to meet the demands of their job in the current economic climate. Because there are so many places that obviously lacks the proper systems for a quicker response. So because of that, sometimes when there are incidents, especially with fire, response to averting the fire is always affected, because some of the roads addressing system is not great, so it becomes a challenge for the act to be fully executed. So it's important that in all of this, although there are some acts and law in place, they've got to be revisited, they've got to be sort of enforced, and then resources that are needed to make it fully functional are made available to these authorities so they could carry out their mandate as it's supposed to be. Now you want to look at the Environmental Protection Act. This act is actually supposed to look after the entire environment in Ghana. All environmental issues, from environmental pollution, from sound, waste management, everything, it's them. Again, they are doing so well, but obviously there's so much they can do. The country is growing, people are growing, activities are growing, but they are understaffed. So they also need some support to be able to fully carry out their mandate. Some of the things that they do is that when they get to people's premises or employers' premises and things aren't done right, most of the time what they do is to pass some enforcement notices for them to improve on them and then report back to them. If it's refused, some fines and sanctions are meted out to such businesses, and then the businesses now begin to do well. In the mining area, for instance, the Environmental Protection Agency instituted what we call the ACOBEN rating. ACOBEN is a system that they put in place to reward people or businesses that are environmentally responsible, making sure that they do the right things to protect the environment for generations unborn. EPA came out with that novelty, and it's worked so well that the bigger mining clients are the ones that are actually being rewarded, because they tend to be more responsible towards environmental issues in the country. On the flip side, we've got a lot of illegal mining that is going on that is still destroying loads and loads and loads of water bodies. So I'm afraid to say that if we don't have that government backing or the legislative backing to sort of crack the whip, maybe in the next 10, 15 years, there's going to be water scarcity in our part of the world. And this will not just affect Ghana, it will affect the neighbors that also tap into water from a system. So it's important that we look at this and government really begins to walk the talk and not continue to talk the talk. Our environment has to be protected because they give way for a lot of things to be produced. If the environment is destroyed, nothing can be done. The Minerals Act, this is the act that mandates or that supports anybody getting into mining to go through. Now, this Minerals Act has been there since 1993. I believe that some updates have been made, but still, so many things are changing. So this act has to be up and doing, and then it has to be able to live up to its expectation, so that people who do not do the right things as far as mining is concerned could be sanctioned, could be punished, as it were. Now we look at the National Insurance Commission Act. This is an act that has been amended. So this one is fit for purpose. It talks about employers, employees, everybody signing up to insurance programs so that they could be taken care of in times of need, in times of any permanent disability at work. Workmen's compensation scheme also fall under this act, and it's working well. So I think that we have got to give thumbs up to government and all the actors within the framework for making sure this act lives to its full billing. Now the Labor Act 2003. Labor issues are changing at a very fast pace. Talk of minimum wage, talk of conditions of service, talk of unions and the like. All these things are coming up by the day, and they are really getting really sophisticated. It's about time that the Labor Commission improves the act to reflect the current issues. If that is not done, it becomes a challenge for anybody to be able to get fair hearing as far as labor issues are concerned. So in a nutshell, these are some of the few acts that I felt I want to talk about. But as I mentioned, all these acts are functioning, but you didn't see anywhere in the act that I mentioned Health and Safety Authority. That is the challenge in Ghana. So if we had the Health and Safety Authority in the country, what it will mean is that as the overarching body, it would make sure that laws that are made, all these ones implemented so that there will be no lapses in the system and leadership could be held accountable. But because these are not there, there's always political interference in one bit or the other that ensures that people who are politically exposed do not go through the full rigors of the law, even if they create an offense. That has to be avoided because the law has to be no respecter of persons. once you violate the law, the sanctions must apply. So we hope that in the near future, we would have a national body that will be mandated to look after risk, health, and safety within the various sectors so that improvements could be made. Now, an accident that has happened within this Ghana in the last 5 years or last 7 years. First of all, there was a major accident, and the first one, flood and fire disaster. You could look it up on the bbc.com website, and you would find more information. So it rained on a particular day, and the fuel station obviously got engulfed in flames, and lots of people died. 157 plus people perished, and the injuries that people suffered is enormous. You could find more information about that on the BBC website. Then again, that 2 years after, at Atomic Junction, there was another disaster. First one was a fuel station. The second one was a fuel station, but this case, an LPG station. And the third accident, a Piatti disaster earlier this year, was a mining incident. Mining company having an explosion because they were carrying and transporting explosives. Explosives that were being carried with no respect to the laws of the land. There was a disaster that wiped out an entire community. So there are efforts in trying to rebuild the community that got wiped out. And the final one, obviously another fuel tanker incident in some parts of Ghana that 4 perished and several getting injured. So if you look at it critically, you would realize that the accidents are mostly from a particular sector, oil and gas and mining. And this is because the risk that these institutions carry is enormous. So there's the need for a proper holistic approach to be taken to make sure that these things are reversed as fast as possible. Else, there will be lots more people who are going to die, and there will not be any proper accountability to that effect. Now, we also need to look at the fact that accidents become profit crashes. As I mentioned from the beginning, every organization set out to make profit. So in making profit, you've got to understand that if you have accidents in your value chain, your profit will be crashed. No employer wants to have their profits crashed. So there's the need for continuous work to be done to prevent some of these profit crashes from coming in to destroy the hard work they put in, the revenues that they realized, and the goodwill that they may be feeling. So some of the hidden costs of workplace injuries mostly are grouped into two. There's a direct cost and there's an indirect cost. Indirect costs, you are talking about the damage to reputation, the extra wages, lost time, sick pay, and all of that. With damage to reputation, that is something that's not tangible. We realize that your business now begins to have a lot of purchase orders cancelled. No serious business would want to engage your services, and you actually spend a lot more money trying to build your damaged brand than to maintain a brand that isn't damaged. So it actually makes a lot of sense to try to be more risk and safety conscious than waiting for accidents to happen to do sort of damage control over it. So it has gotten to a point where every organization is now working so hard to ensure that their reputation is protected so that they do not incur all the challenges that there is to it. Then again, you also want to look at lost time. If you set out to say produce 100 bags of cocoa in a day, and your key guys get injured at work for that reason, they can't come to work, there's no way you will be able to meet your 100 bags of cocoa per day. That has been some lost time that is affecting your bottom line at the end of the day. So it's always very important that these guys, when they are hurt at work and they are even home receiving treatment, you still end up paying them. So you'd realize that you are losing more than you are gaining. So it makes a lot of sense to do the right things first for the first time, so we avoid some of these unnecessary expenses that would have a way of harming our businesses and destroying the brand in the public. The direct cost also includes insurance costs. Once your operational vehicles, vessels, and all of that are involved in accidents, insurance premiums go high or they go up. You wouldn't want to spend more money paying for services that you could have actually avoided paying for. So it makes sense to now begin to look at ways that you can actually bring down accidents within your business. And when you do that, you save cost and then your profit won't be crashed. So the safety of work is very critical for everybody. All of us are involved. And when we begin to come together to work, we will be able to realize the full potential of making sure these things are done the right way. It's also very important that when these accidents that are crashing our profits do happen. We've got to set out time to investigate these. By investigating these things, we are able to tell what went wrong, what could have been done right, how to do it better going forward. And when investigations are done, let's share the lessons amongst the teams so everybody can get some takeaways from it to be able to improve their knowledge, one, improve their experience, two, and then it even gives employees that feel-good factor because they'll begin to feel empowered that when things happen, investigations are going to be launched. And when investigations are launched, the findings will be brought to the fore so everybody learns from it to prevent it from happening in future. Workplace safety culture, I want to look at it from domains. So you want to look at how we can all contribute to a culture of looking after our safety at work. And then we also want to improve how we can work in teams. Most of the time, when people are having good team working spirit, it helps them reduce lots of accidents. But if the teams are not working in unison, then there's always a challenge of accidents happening and people, not getting the right picture and all of that. It leads to a lot of chaos within businesses. Let's also look at communication. If you do not tell me the issues, I wouldn't know the issues. So it's important that communication is done clearly without fear nor favor. In that way, we are all on the same page and we are able to understand what is expected of us. Then we can do just that. If you communicate inappropriately, chances are you won't get the right feedback. And when you don't get the right feedback, that is recipe for disaster. So at all times, it is very critical that we try to communicate properly with the right people. Top down, bottom up, whichever way, communication is communication. Let's communicate in simple language that everybody would understand. And when they do understand, they will act according to it. If they do not understand, there's every chance that it would become a chaotic situation at the workplace. We've got to manage our risk. In Ghana, we've got 2 seasons. The first season is either it is raining or it is sunny. What in the UK you call winter and summer. In Ghana, we call it Harmattan and rainy season. So these are 2 seasons that we've got. During the Harmattan season, it's dusty and all of that. So as a business that is involved in maybe grains or something like that, you've got to understand that you need the sun to dry your things. In as much as rain will come and still water your crops to get more produce, you need to find a way of using both properly. Manage your risk such that whatever it is that you feel could go wrong, there must be a way to deal with it first and before it happens. Because if you do not deal with it from the start, it might end up hurting the business and its future in the long term. So all risk from burglary, risk from theft, risk from accidents, permanent disability, all of these risks must be managed properly. And when it is being managed, it has to be clear. The pathway to managing it must be clear and has to be easily accessible by everyone. When it's that way, or when it's done that way, there's that openness and that trust is built. When trust is built, people will do more than it's expected. So it's important that we come together as a team to get this thing going the way it's supposed to be. We've got to also look at our human environmental factors. Things that human beings are actually responsible for that will have an effect on the environment. We need to look at it. People who don't talk amongst themselves because of one misunderstanding or the other has to be dealt with. People issues must be top priority. When we're able to deal with people issues, we will be able to deal with the resultant issue that might come up. 90% of accidents are caused by human error. So if human beings are working within the establishment, even machines, they are being operated by human beings. So the human element is very critical that we've got to manage and manage it well. If you're able to manage the human element well, it helps us to eradicate a lot of the issues that would have happened. Now we also have to look at how we can recognize, respond, and disclose adverse events. When things go bad, we need to find a way of still communicating it. Let's be truthful as much as possible to get word out there so everybody now begin to understand that this is what is happening, this is how we're trying to respond to it, and that everybody must be calm, must be patient, we'll get through it. Even when your staff are hurt, you need to support them as well so that they feel that sense of belonging. When that sense of belonging is felt, people will do more than just sitting out there and waiting for the right opportunity to do anything. So now we also have to look at trust and psychological safety. And this, according to this presentation, in the case of Ghana, for instance, psychological safety is the belief that your environment is safe for interpersonal risk taking. It's similar, but slightly different from trust. So what it is that within our workspaces, we've got to understand that our environment is safe. We've created that safe environment for each and every one of us to do the right things, even though there will be risk within it. Once we have that, with that belief that the environment is safe, people will go all out to do more. Once it's being done, risk assessment, risk management is a continual process. It's not a one-off thing. So let's continue to still look at risk assessing the entire process to see where what could go wrong. Then we can find a way of meeting them and resolving them so they do not create problems, in the future for the business. When one person gets affected, the rippling effect is that it affects the entire team and the entire business at large. So we need to give people, and that is the benefit of doubt when you take a risk. When people begin to do the right things that might be risky, until we get in there, we will not be able to see what really is ahead of us. So it's important that we trust people to deliver on their mandate. Of course, trust and guide them. You don't just trust them and leave them to do what they have to do. Let's trust and guide the people. By guiding them, they will deliver on the mandates that we set for them to do. So with the psychological safety, also look at how others will give you the benefit of doubt about the risk you are taking. You will support people to do it, let people also support you to do it. So my team expects me to speak up. It's how we do things. Nobody should be able to hide in their shell that something bad is going on, but they can't speak to it. You should be able to communicate clearly so people know the challenge. Because if you do not communicate, nobody will know what is happening. And if they don't know what is happening, we won't be able to find a solution to the problem. Because what then happens is, if you do not solve the problem at its elementary stage, by the time it matures, it will get out of hand and you won't be able to deal with it. So it makes a lot of sense to be able to support and give encouragement to the teams so they could speak up when things go bad. You only learn when these things are done. As employees, it is our responsibility to create a safe workplace, of course, in tandem with management and leadership and employers. So we need to also be on the lookout for all opportunities to improve our professional competence. It is important that employees are trained to develop their skills, develop their knowledge, their ability, their training, and experience. When this is done, then you are assured that employees within the value chain would be able to develop programs and processes that would help mitigate any potential risk as far as health and safety is concerned, than sit down and wait for somebody to come make decisions for them. It is also important that we strike the work-life balance. In our getting things going, our hitting our goals, our targets, and all of that, a lot of stress sets in. And when somebody is stressed because of too much to do or too little to do, the rippling effect is that there could be chaos. There could be accidents in the workplace, which will still go back to crash your profits. So it makes a lot of sense that let's give them enough time to take off work. Let's give them the responsibility for them to own up that indeed they are tired, they need rest, they need to recharge their batteries and come back again stronger. When they do that, and this is something that is actually missing within my space, because when I say my space, I'm referring to Ghana. Because of the income levels and people trying to get by really, it makes a lot of people sign up for things that are sort of harmful to their health without really thinking about it, because some of them are breadwinners and they've got to feed their families. In doing that, they don't take rest, they don't have any leave days, they work throughout the week, throughout the month and the year. It causes burnout. And when people get burned out, sometimes they develop serious ailments. And when these ailments develop, they spend almost all their money trying to deal with themselves. If you go talk about masons or construction workers, not a lot of people know in my part of the world that silica dust, an active ingredient in cement, is contained in a bag of cement. So most of them do not have any respirator on. They don't have any construction design management guidelines to support them do things right. They just get up and get it done because they've got to survive. So most of these guys, after 10, 15, 20 years of repeatedly doing the same thing, begin to have a lot of lung infections that could lead to some lung cancer, respiratory challenges, and the like. Because I mean, these guys do not have enough knowledge about this, and they have not balanced their work life, so it becomes a problem for them. In dealing with this risk and trying to change the narrative and get profit going without any challenges, work-life balance must be instituted and must be respected. from the director's level to the cleaner's level. Everybody deserves time off work to be able to rejuvenate and come back stronger. It is also important that we've got to engage, involve, collaborate, and influence together. When leadership and subordinates come together, synergy is formed. And when that synergy is formed, it generates profit. So it makes a lot of sense at all times for leadership and the employees or the workforce to come together to work. In conducting risk assessment, this is important. Leadership cannot just sit up there and make decisions and push it down the throat of subordinates. They've got to be together. Sometimes pick their views, get them involved, collaborate with them. They might not be saying the best of things you want to hear, or maybe the most sensible things, quote unquote, that leadership would like to hear. But the fact that you listen to them at all gives them that sense of belonging, that indeed I'm head of where I work. That will encourage them to give up more than just to relax and wait for things to get out of hand and all of that. So it's important that we come together to influence. Let's create that risk-free and safety-conscious work environment so that everybody benefits. At the end of the day, if we record that several millions of hours of work and there has been no lost time injury or incident, that saves company a lot of money, and that helps in trying to grow the business as well. Again, employees are the reason why the business survives. So the employees are your first point of call with the community, with the customers, with your authorities, and with your suppliers. It is very important that you try to look after the employees. Once you look after them well, they look after your business. If you don't look after them well, it becomes a challenge with them looking after your business. And when they don't look after your business, recipe for disaster. So at all times, we need to look at how we can look at these things to improve the bottom line. One key thing that we can do to sort of create that safe workspace devoid of all risk and HSE challenges is to do a continuous risk assessment. Now, the risk assessment that we want to do, risk assessment obviously is a breaking down of all hazards and risks into smaller units, finding out what could be done about them to prevent harm from happening to people. So we want to also find out that the risk assessment that you've developed, is it suitable? Is it fit for purpose? Is it sufficient? Does it capture everything in entirety? Have you communicated it to all stakeholders involved? Did you receive any feedback after communication? Were they good? Were they right? What then happens to it? Has there been any changes within the business that for that reason the risk assessment has to be amended? Are all controls in place? After conducting the risk assessment, did you manage to see that all the controls that you've indicated are in place? If they are not, what timelines do you have to put them in place? These are very critical in trying to solve the problems within the workspace. So it is very essential that at all times we get people involved in doing all these things. Are actors ready and trained? The people doing the risk assessment, are they trained? Even the risk that has been identified and the controls put out there. All the people within the value chain, employers, employees, and all of that, are they trained on a risk assessment? If they are, what are the key takeaways? When we go through all these things, it helps everybody come to the same place, come to the same level to understand that the risk within the business is not different for leadership, neither is it different for subordinates. But risk is risk and it affects everybody. So we need to come together in unison to find a way, towards resolving these things. As I mentioned, you do not do risk assessment in silos. You need to do them in teams. Engage your teams, get their viewpoint. The way you might see things obviously will be different from somebody else's perspective. Hence the need to bring everybody together. When you bring everybody together, then everybody is able to learn a thing or two from the risk there is, that you find a way around it so that it could be solved once and for all. You want to create a safe workspace devoid of all risks and HSE issues. And as a responsible health and safety person, it is important that you bring your teams together to be able to chart this path, get the views of people heard so that solutions could be provided instead of challenges being rendered at all times. Once these are done and accidents do happen, you need to obviously proactively report. And when you report and investigations are launched into it, then you are able to identify the causes of the accidents. You will also be able to assess the weaknesses within the systems. Then you can define remedial actions that are needed to be taken to prevent these things from happening in future. Most importantly, you share the lessons. When you share the lessons, people learn from them. When they learn from them, there's every chance that they will not repeat the same mistakes to warrant a similar accident from happening. If somebody gets their hand chopped off from the grinding machine and you share the lessons through videos, through reports, through investigation reports and all of that, all employees wouldn't want to go through that same process. They will learn from that incident and better their approach towards doing things. Taking care of their risk perception obviously would improve. Health and safety issues at the end of the day would also improve. So it's important that we try to look at all these things. And in doing this, it actually improves employee morale. As I mentioned, people now begin to get that sense of belonging, that, okay, whatever it is that we see, people hear. And when they hear us, they are doing more to it than anything else. So it helps us to drive that change we need, and then it improves the bottom line at the end of the day. So it's very important that once we pick it up, proactively report and support investigations into the matter so that things will not happen. So now, what role does risk HSE professionals have to play in all of these things? We can look at safety lifestyles and at the same time look at the skills that they are needed to sort of create that awareness within the workspaces to get things done. First of all, they've got to be that safety leadership. In order to cultivate safety within an environment where the culture is that's not great, there has to be safety leadership. And by leadership, you are expecting that leadership to show commitment, to show support, to be visible as far as safety is concerned. When there's that visibility from leadership, the subordinates won't have a choice than to follow suit. But if there's no visibility, now safety becomes a ticking box exercise. What then happens is that the issues will continue to recur, monies will be lost, accidents will increase, and then there will be total dissatisfaction among staff, high turnover rates will come, people will not want to do more, people would be present but absent, what we call presenteeism. They are there but they are not doing the jobs, and others will be absent as well, absenteeism. They can't be bothered at all. Accident rates will go high, insurance premiums obviously will go high because leadership commitment and support is non-existent. Now we also need to look at our risk management. How are we managing risk? Is there a laid down procedure for managing risk? Has this procedure been properly communicated to everybody? The people who have been communicated to, did they understand it? Are they implementing it? All these things will support you cultivate the right health and safety culture within the workplace. The health and well-being. How well are you looking after your staff? Are they on insurance premiums for their health care, their families? Are they being fed properly? Are they being paid fairly? Are their jobs secured? Do they feel that they are part of a family? I mean, do you allow them time to take off with family, to bond with their families and all of that? All these things, when you do them, it cultivate the culture of safety, and people will be willing to put out their best. As HSE professionals, when we begin to see these lifestyles being lived in organizations, we go all out to be sure that indeed there's a place to work for. No wonder the likes of the Unilever, the Nestle, and the big majors can actually have staff working with them for 30, 40 years. Sometimes some people work there all their life because they are well looked after. It is important that as a role for risk and HSE professionals, we need to look at prioritizing the well-being of our people so we can cultivate the right safety characters for people to learn from. Learning and development, are there opportunities for growth? Are your team members getting the privileges to be able to grow in their career? If you start from here, is there a clear path for promotion, for growth, and all of that? When these are present, you are cultivating the right safety culture within the business. And when you cultivate that, you know that the end result will be enormous. Accidents will be reduced, people will be motivated, they will give up their best, they will feel a part of the business, they will be valued, and they will do more. Now, when people report unsafe conditions, are we blaming them? Is there a blame culture within the system? Or it's an open and transparent system where people can freely report? And when they report, are their reports taken into consideration? Are investigations launched into the report? Are they able to identify the immediate underlying and the root causes? If these are there, then you know that you are cultivating the right attitudes within safety. If they are not there, the safety lifestyle is not right and it has to be corrected. Safe behaviors. Are people living well? I mentioned earlier that 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, tells you that if you've got 40% resources, you are 20% resources, you are obviously able to produce 80% results. The reverse is the case. You can also have 80% resources and still produce 20% results. So whichever way, are people's behaviors right? If the behaviors aren't right, What are we doing to improve the behavioral-based safety, which has been the main challenge in safety practice, people behaviors. So it's important that we need to now empathize with the people, try to understand how they are viewing things, how they see things, and then we can find a way of improving their lot. By doing that, we are cultivating the culture of safety, which would improve the bottom line at the end of the day. On the flip side, the skills that the risk or HSE professional must have is that they must have an advanced training. They should understand exactly what they are doing, how they are talking to the people, how they are coaching them, giving advice and all of that. They should be competent. They should have the skills, the knowledge, the ability, the training, and the experience to deliver on the job that they are doing. Deliver advice to top management, handle external stakeholders properly, make sure that they comply with every law there is as far as their business is concerned, and obviously regulate and advise on updates on changes to the frameworks within which they are operating. If you are operating in the food industry, when food industry standards are changing, you've got to update your teams on that so that everybody is aware the direction things are going. A professional HSE person cannot lack this skill and be efficient. There has to be knowledge as well. In knowledge lies power. If you do not have the knowledge, you can't influence, you cannot lead. It's important that at all times the risk HSE professional is knowledgeable in the area of risk, the area of health and safety, so they could impart the knowledge on other people to create that safe workspace. Are they still continuously learning? Are they open to learning? A risk HSE professional must be open to learning, like what we are doing right now this afternoon. We are all learning from somebody's experience, and I believe it's going to help us move in the right direction as our career grows. Experience. Are we experiencing what we are doing? If we don't have experience, what plans do we have to gain some form of experience? Are we taking internships? Are we doing things? Are we learning from mentors? WSM offers just that. If you are a member of WSM, it's time for you to now begin to look for a mentor who will guide your steps in building your career. By doing that, you now learn the right skills, and then you will be able to function properly as a risk and HSE professional. Very critical. Ability. Are you ready to do the job? Do you have what it takes to do it? It's not just enough having knowledge and the skill. If you do not have the ability, you still can't influence people. Let's all be guided that risk HSE professionals are influencers. Do we have the ability to influence people positively? If you don't have that skill, this is the time to learn to develop the skill of influencing people through the right abilities. So as a risk HSE professional, you can't do more than any of this. Then growth. Do you see growth potential within the business? Are you sure that in the next 5 years, you're going to get to that level you aspire, having all these skill sets? If yes, then you are at the right place. So the role of the risk HSE professionals, first of all, is to train your teams, is to demonstrate competence, is to have knowledge, is to also use your experience to advise, have the ability to influence positively, and create opportunities for growth within the business. Once you do that, then you know that we will be able to reduce the risk in our businesses, improve health and safety, and the bottom line obviously will get improved as well. So in concluding my session, I'd like to briefly talk about the key takeaways that health and safety professionals can do, or all of us can take away with us to improve our bottom lines. It is important that risk HSE professionals and all of that, we need to put our people first. Leadership, management, subordinates, ground floor workers, we need to put people first. With people comes the profit. Without people, there's no profit. So it's always important that we try to prioritize the health and safety of our people. Once we prioritize that, they will in turn support us reduce every risk there is in the business, and bottom lines will be achieved. So you need to want to create that people first culture. The benefit is that you obviously will have an increased productivity. When people are energized, people are motivated, people are sure that they are cared for in the business, they do more. Productivity will increase. When people also feel that they are part of the process, they will become loyal. They won't be using your company or your business as a springboard for other opportunities. They would want to be part of the process, contribute to its growth, and make sure that it survives the test of time. And then again, they will also be the magnet to attract talented workforce. When people stay for long periods, long years in the business, others get attracted to it and they want to come. Your company now becomes an employer of choice. So it goes without saying that when our parents look after us to grow, we also got to look after them for them to grow old. So it's important that we put people first, and in doing that, all our goals will be realized, and profitability won't be something that we will not have to discuss it. The three main pillars for people first culture will be: we now need to listen to the people, we need to communicate to them, and then we need to offer them support. As leaders, before we can deal with risk within the value chain in Ghana, in the rest of the world, we need to listen to our people. We need to support them, and then we need to communicate to them. Communicate in languages that they can understand. When you communicate and you get the right feedback, then you can tell that it went down well, people heard you. But if you communicate and you don't get the right feedback, that's a problem. We need to find better ways of communicating. Now you have a strategy, you want to execute it for success. Before you can do that, your teams come first. Your team has to be creative. We need to plan. We need to understand the vision and run with the vision. Then we need to be innovative in dealing with this. And all of this, teamwork is critical to success. So we all need to come to the drawing table to look at every risk there is, every health and safety problem in the business, find a way around it as a team so we can deliver on our strategy whilst executing it to achieve success. At this point, I'll bring my presentation to a close and ask for any questions they may. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Edward, so much for such an interesting and fascinating session. We do have a lot of questions, so I'll kick off. The first one is, what impact do you think not having an overarching regulator in Ghana is having in the country?
Right, so this one, it's a question that I meet all the time. So there's confusion in the system. The impact is that there's confusion because we don't have a national standard for dealing with health and safety. What has helped some of us is the fact that we have been privy to international bodies, international organizations. So we've learned from the best. And that's what we are trying to replicate here in our system. So there's confusion because when COVID broke out, for instance, a lot of our government, or most our government institutions, relied primarily on information from the UK, from the US, and all of that. But these are advanced countries, not as ours. Their systems are mature in terms of e-commerce, in terms of working from home, and all of that. So they were able to justifiably be on lockdown for a long time. Ghana came on lockdown for 3 weeks, and within 3 weeks, the country collapsed. E-commerce doesn't work properly. I mean, we are now growing into it. We're not there yet. So without a national legislation on health and safety, there's obviously a recipe for disaster, chaos, no standard to deliver on the mandate. People will do things haphazardly. That does not help. So when there's a national legislation, then we can all conform to the standard it states, and then there will be uniformity across board.
Okay, thank you. And then you talked about the need to involve all people in reporting hazards and implementing controls to stay safe. So how do you recommend companies put this type of system in place and start taking those steps towards improving their safety culture?
Right, so it's very important. Improving safety culture obviously starts from auditing your systems within. So your people problems are mostly top on the agenda. When you implement a bottom-up approach, you get town hall meetings, seminar sessions, trainings, and all of that. People are able to voice out the grievances they may have. When these points are made, you don't just sweep them under the carpet. Take notes, go think about them, come back to them with feedback. That way you get their buy-in and their trust. I also mentioned engagement. Continuous engagement amongst the teams obviously will help that trust is built. And when trust is built, they will give off their best and improvements will be made.
Okay, thank you. And going back to the lack of that body or central system, how does the employer feel then? Are they forced or convinced? How do you convince them that they need a health and safety system and a health and safety professional if there's no overarching body or central system?
Right, so the easy way out is for the first of all, the health and safety person must be knowledgeable. You've got to have data. So when you are making a case to leadership don't just make decisions on emotions. They make decisions on facts and figures. Have your data so you can speak to the data. Once you speak to the data, it will support them make informed decisions. In my past life, past career, when I used to work for a company, there were a lot of accidents that were happening because we were hauling fuels on the road. So I used one example of a key staff who is a driver dying on the road. What happens to their family? Assuming he is the only breadwinner, what happens to their family? What happens to even the business in delivering our value to our customers? So the company I used to work for not only did commercial vehicles fuel, but also did specialized aviation fuels. So let's just say British Airways is planned to leave Ghana at 10 p.m. today. Now the driver who is supposed to transport the aviation fuel to the airport gets involved in an accident in the day and dies. So the fuel doesn't get to the airline on time. The airline won't be able to travel. Passengers will be stranded. The company will lose money. Our brand reputation will be mad. Considering all this, wouldn't you do the right thing to make sure that we don't go through these problems? I cited such examples with them. Also backed it up with videos from the internet that were speaking to the cost of an accident. So when they understood that, they bought into it and then were able to implement the changes that we needed to implement.
Okay, thank you. And then thinking about the acts that you mentioned right at the beginning and the sort of legal framework that is in place in a different form, but are there any plans within the government to review these older acts and bring them up to date? And also, are there any plans to improve the safety and health institutional framework in Ghana?
Yes, so there are plans. Most of the time, people are talking about issues, and fortunately, government listens a lot. So people are talking about issues and they are taking cues from it. For instance, COVID offered them a good opportunity to change the way they were thinking. Hence the Insurance Act has been updated. But when COVID came, a lot of things got affected. Insurance-wise, didn't cover. So they now had to come back, review to reflect the changes. I'm not saying another COVID should come, but I think when disasters like that happen, it puts leadership on their toes and they tend to think. As we speak, there is a health and safety bill currently before the Parliament of Ghana for consideration. And this bill, I've been privileged to have seen it. I did a few portions of it, reviews and all of that, with some ministers and cabinet people. So I know that they are considering it. Once it is passed, it becomes the overarching document, and then it will reflect the change that we are all looking forward to seeing. It's not just going to sort of standardize the system, it's also going to be an employment creating avenue, because you need to hire people, you train them, people will now be better at it, and it will improve. So the old bills or the old acts are still being reviewed on case-by-case basis. And then again, there's a hope that the health and safety bill currently before them would be passed as well, so that we can have unison to improve workplace health and safety.
Okay, thank you. And then talking about one of the acts in particular, the National Insurance Commission Act of 2021, I've got several questions on this. And what does that insurance actually pay for? Do all companies have it? And how, if somebody is injured at work, how does that actually support them? And how does that whole act actually help the individual that's injured?
Unfortunately, not every Ghanaian understands what insurance is. Lots of businesses, and in Ghana, in Africa for that matter, we tend to believe in God a lot. So people will tell you they pray, nothing bad would happen. I can understand that faith, because I'm a man of faith as well. But I also know that accidents won't tell you when they happen. So you've got to be prepared, although you are praying. Lots of people are not insured. Lots of people do not have no knowledge on insurance products and services in the country. So what I have decided to do as a company is to advocate on why there's a need for insurance to be done. Now, there are different kinds of insurance. There's public liability, there's all assets risk insurance, there's workmen compensation, there's accident insurance. I mean, there's several of them that you need to talk to an insurance broker. Based on your needs, they can prefer the right one for you. What I know, what I work for, is my company is insured with a public liability insurance. So wherever I go to work and there's any issue, I follow my insurance to make the claim paid. And then all my assets, including my home, my television sets, my vehicle are all comprehensively insured as well. Then I've got permanent disability insurance. So in case of work, if I have any damage to my legs, anything that I can't work again, there's some insurance that fall on to survive. But like I said, a lot of people do not understand these things, neither do they know these things. Insurance knowledge is on the decline. So it has to be improved so that it will be at the doorsteps of people. When they understand what it stands for, they are better informed in making decisions towards that.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question from somebody, as I've been able to work with my management to implement a near-miss reporting award scheme, as well as initiated a safety campaign where the team is championing a 0 LTI on and off the job. But the issue is staff feel demotivated because they feel psychologically stressed. How do you address it? So measures have been adopted for teams to confide in superiors and colleagues. So it's looking about psychological stress. How do you deal with that within a team?
First of all, you've got to look at creating that good work-life balance. So my former employer, we instituted what we called staff day out. So every quarter, all staff and their families go to a location at the expense of the company to just bond, have fun outside work. That was an informal setting. And in doing that, people obviously came out of their shelves to participate, to talk issues around work that bothers them. They were able to share it. And we realized that it really supported and it grew the team cohesion. Another thing that my past managing director did that worked well was he instituted lunch breaks with every member of the team. So from time to time, he picked maybe 3 people from a team, takes them to lunch, informal discussion. We talk about work-related issues that he feels they couldn't talk to their leadership about. So they discuss with him directly. So when it gets to management meetings, he's able to put them together and make changes. That also supported team cohesion. We created entertainment and all of that. So it shouldn't just be about work, achieving the goals. We should look into the interests of the people. By that, we support them whichever way possible to get the best out of them. In getting the best out of them, they will also give you their best. But if you do not, and it's all about the bottom line, they obviously feel deflated and won't do more. So to the person that asked the question, it's important that you begin to look within, create that work-life balance, create that enabling environment for people to speak. When they're able to speak out, it helps. You can talk to a third party. That is fine. That's the company's process. But what works best is having individual conversations with the people so that they know that they can trust you in telling you what they are telling you. Trust is key. If they trust you, they'll tell you more. If they don't, they won't tell you anything. So it's important that we look at that.
That's great, thank you. And you talked earlier on at the beginning of the presentation about empowering your people. And I suppose that goes part way in doing that, having that trust that people can confide. But is there anything else, any other pieces of advice you can give about how you actually go about empowering your people effectively?
So I try to delegate a lot more because, as you know, for the past 1 year, I've been in and out of the UK studying, but my business was still going on. So I don't micromanage people. I give you tasks and I trust that you're able to deliver on the task. I come to you to ask you maybe once a week, where are we on this? Is there any challenge you are facing? How can I help? Like that. So you let them feel that they own the process. Empowering them goes to rewarding them at the same time. So when they feel they own the process and the rewards are there, they will do more. And I also make all my key staff, all my staff feel belonged. I eat the same thing they eat. I drink the same thing they drink. There's no discrimination whatsoever. When you do that, they feel that they are part of the process. If I have to go somewhere with them, if we have to sit in economy 6 seats, we all sit in economy. If we want to do business, we all do business. So you give them that sense of belonging, that they are part of the family, part of the process, not just a fraction of it, or they are not your employees. Don't give people the impression to feel that they are just employees. Let them feel they are key part of the process. Especially the people I don't joke with are the janitors and security people. Without them, nothing gets done. So you need to take care of them as you take care of your accountant. Otherwise, one day the janitor will refuse to come to the office. When you get to the restrooms that they are not cleaned, your guess is as good as mine. So you need to get these people together.
Wonderful, thank you. We haven't got any more questions, but I think they were a great group of questions that people have asked, so thank you for that. So I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you, Edward, so much for sharing your knowledge with us. It was a really energetic and purposeful presentation. That was one of the comments that was sent through to me. Thank you everybody that's joined us this afternoon. The recording of this presentation will be on the IIRSM Resource Hub hopefully tomorrow, so you'll be able to catch up and recap on anything in your own time. So we'll end the webinar there. I hope you have a really great rest of the day, and thank you very much and goodbye. Thank you.